So on this video, I'm going to talk about wearables and the ones that I use on a regular basis. So over the years, I've used a few different products, and the main one for me has been a Garmin. I've been wearing that for all my runs. There's different ones out there you can potentially use, some ones like Coros or Apple Watches or those sort of things. There's lots of different brands you can use, but I personally have been using Garmin over the years, and I use that to track my running. So I go for a run, it gives me the distance, it gives me the time around, it gives me my heart rate during my run, it gives me the elevation of my runs, lots of like minute type details that are really interesting to me when I'm running. So I wear that when I'm out there to make sure I get the best possible information once I've finished it. I then share that information to my Strava and that sort of thing. So it's tracking my activity. I find it really interesting for that. But also recently I've been wearing a Oura ring. So there's other products out there like Whoop that do a similar thing. And Garmin itself and Apple Watch, they both track that sort of information, but I don't like wearing a watch day to day. So I started wearing this ring the last, say, month. And the reason why I wanted to do that, I want to track my steps. So I want to do a few things, and I'm going to talk about those. But the first thing that it does for me is tracks my steps for my activity. I can't wear it during the gym because you're lifting weights and it's quite a big chunky thing, so it does actually hurt when you're using weights as well, and it gets damaged. But for the rest of the time when I'm making steps around the house or that sort of stuff, it gives me a real indication of how many steps I'm taking in a day, which can help me work out if I've been busy that day, if I've done enough movement, and if I've done a long run, I can then work out, like maybe reduce my steps for the day to make sure I'm not doing too much or getting overtired. So it is a really cool way of tracking that, and it gives information in the app, which I'll show you on the screen, how it does that. The next thing is, and this is the real reason I got the Oura ring, was sleep. So you can wear these other watches to track your sleep, but the Oura ring is known for that, and it gives me a good indication of how long I have slept for. So it breaks down into deep sleep, REM sleep, looks at your heart rate variations when you're sleeping. It looks at your temperature, your body temperature, so you can see if you are feeling a little bit too hot or a little bit too cold, and it works that out for you. And for me, this was really interesting because I wanted to know if I was getting enough sleep. And because I've personally had a young baby recently, so up and down in the middle of the night, not necessarily me doing the up and down bit, but just being around it is pretty tough, and having an idea of how much I'm sleeping will give me a better indicator and how much I can push myself in training the next day. So, Oura ring, great for sleep. You can actually work out the details on that. I've actually found that I've been getting a pretty solid amount of sleep per day. Nothing optimal, and there's different rankings on there. You can basically go from 0 to 100, and there's reports of people who are getting 100 every day on that sort of stuff. But I'm generally between the 70 and 85 mark for my sleep, which is reasonably solid, I think. So between 5 and 7.5 hours normally. So happy with that. The next thing, which I didn't actually know I needed until, I don't need it, but I quite like it when I had the results from it, is the Readiness. And the only way I've really noticed it being useful is over the last few days, actually last couple of weeks, where I felt a bit run down. I've had a bit of potentially a cold. And I knew I felt a little bit rough, but I didn't know exactly what would happen to my training. But my Readiness score was really low on my Oura. It was down in the 30s, whereas normally I was around about like the 80s on that area. So having that information and then looked into a bit deeper, it showed my body temperature was higher than normal, which would indicate that I'm feeling a bit ill. So my Readiness score was low, which means that when I try and do training, I won't be as ready for it as I wanted to be. I actually tried to train while the Readiness score was low, and I just didn't want to, and I just felt a bit rough. And normally you can do that just from feel, and if I hadn't had that score, it wouldn't have made a difference. I probably would have rested anyway. But it's nice to know that the information I'm getting is accurate depending on what my body is actually doing. So I found that a really cool way of working out if I'm able to train. And I imagine if I was competing at a high level, that sort of information is going to be really useful, because it means that rather than pushing your body to your limit on a day where you've got a low readiness, you can actually save it a day, have a good night's sleep, and then come at it a day later. So you don't have to do your interval sessions, your hard sessions, your races on that thing. And it also can give you information after the fact to see why you haven't performed as well as you wanted to. One of those things I wouldn't like to happen if it would be for it to actually change the way I do things, in terms of stop me from doing something I wanted to do on that day. but having the information and knowing it is often a good way of doing things. They are the three things that these wearables I find useful, some of the ways that I use information to help my training. And I'm not too sure how long I'll wear it for, and I do know that if I wanted to get more information again, I can just pop it back on again and get that data. But yeah, I'd recommend doing some form of this, not necessarily in the products that I've recommended, but these are the ones I use and find useful. Hope you found that video useful, and if you want to find out more about myself, I'm at Matt Woodywood on all the different channels, and more about Run Through, check out runthrough.com.